Andy Fenton.
We don't do it by the glass down in Victoria in lockdown, Jason. We just we go straight from the bottle when we get locked down.
I'm expecting to see a brown paper bag on it, Andy. Like you're just like, I've had enough.
Go for something a little bit harder this morning. Oh my God!
Well,
Good evening.
Well, there you go. Somebody gave me a bottle of this. I don't know if it's any good. Fifth leg, Shiraz 2020. So that's what I'm drinking tonight. I didn't have to raid my mum's $5 wine. So because someone gave me some free wine. So good to see you, my friend. Hey, folks. Good to see a few people jumping on. There you go. Got James here. Ben's already in the house. Alison, happy Friday. Glass of wine. I know you guys have got a glass of vino ready to roll.
Ready and raring.
Oh, there we go. Graham's back in town. Good to see you back, Graham. As we roll. So we've got a special guest here in store for you guys tonight. So make sure you hang around. We'll introduce Heather in a moment. But as we always do, Andy, do the quick intros. Andy Fenton over there on that side, and Jason Witten here. Many months ago now, almost 2 years ago now, in the middle of lockdown, we started this show, Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, to help out our respective clients, our respective tribes of people, small business owners, investors, property investors, and we've been doing it ever since. Mostly, we're over sort of 50 plus episodes now. I think it's like 60 something or other. The sun came on, Andy, wherever you are.
It's like, oh, the clouds disappeared. Victoria, we're alive.
There you go. But good to see you folks. We'll be sharing some of our opinions, pontifications, and potentially wisdom. But what we say is usually more wine than wisdom in this show. But you never know. We might talk about something that's of use. And I think with our guest today, which I'm going to bring on just quickly, and I know Heather's sitting in the green room with a glass of wine. There's Heather. How are you, buddy?
Good, guys. Thank you. Yourselves?
We're doing well, and we're even better because you're here with us today. Maybe the show will be pretty good in comparison to the previous ones, I think, with some talent flying in from down at the farm, aren't you? So you're sort of northern New South Wales right now.
Yeah, in the border bubble. So like everybody, pretty much down, but no better place to be than right here, having a wine with you lads, and sharing. No doubt more wisdom for me than wine, but let's see how we go.
Looking forward to that. So we'll put you back in the green room, Heather. We'll roll you back out in about 10 minutes, maybe. We'll do a little bit of a segment, what's in the news. So stick with us, folks. Heather will be back in moments. But Andy, plenty going on out there as we sort of enter another strange time. It's been the saying of the sayings, isn't it? Strange times indeed, with more lockdowns and more malarkey going on, but there's certainly plenty in the news that I've got on my over in my neck of the woods. So I might give it a bit of a whirl and kick it off, folks.
Let's do it.
For those who,
I said, let's do it.
Let's do it. For those who don't know the show real role, we do a bit of what's in the news. That's always important, just to sort of see what's going on out there. We think there's probably one or two things you should know. And we always love the idea of if you've got questions, make sure you whack them in the chat for us, gang. And we'll see if we can get around to answering those as we go or at the end of the show. So as we roll along, Andy saying, are we on all chats, on all streams? Yeah, we're meant to be on, Andy, but it doesn't look like it's rolling out there, does it, with the stream? So it might be a bit light on this tonight. Always interesting when you're doing live shows, folks. See the best planning. So other than ending it and trying again, which probably not a good idea, we might just keep rolling. But it's not for some reason, Andy, pumping into the Fenton financials. It's all on. It says it's on. So we'll see what happens. But there you go. But folks, make sure you put your questions in the chat. And we might have to make sure we get a replay going, Andy, out to the Fenton system as we roll along. But I've got a bit of stuff in the news, folks, and if I make sure I don't knock over my wine while I'm getting this organised, But what's in the news? I covered these two things earlier this week, Andy. But the gap between the unit prices and the house prices in Sydney is now bigger than it's ever been in history. So it's an interesting one. We always track this in the real estate game where house prices do outstrip other types of real estate in residential, and they create a gap. Then often that gap gets pushed or pulled depending on the demand, depending on what's going on out in the marketplace. And so, as we've seen in many cycles before, this is my 3.5 cycle in the real estate game for me. Houses tend to set the pace, and townhouses and apartments tend to follow. And that will happen certainly across the places that are very expensive. Sydney now setting the pace at a $1.4 million average house price, the median house price. Melbourne and Canberra have just cracked the median house price. Crazy numbers, big numbers. Brisbane is now a 50% difference in median house price, Andy, between Sydney and Brisbane. And so that's why I'm a big fan right now of the Brisbane marketplace. And this little chart came out during the week thanks to Tim Boyle. He's our main man who he finds these charts everywhere. He's awesome. But I love this stuff. But lots of net results up into Brisbane. Not as many as you'd expect coming out of Melbourne or Sydney. A lot of Victorians and Sydney siders choosing to move quite locally to those cities. And you and I have chatted about this before, Andy. We believe they'll come back to those big cities at some point in the future. But I think the net gain in Brisbane or Southeast Queensland is going to be way more sticky than those other locations as far as I'm concerned. But there's a few big gaps there.
They're big numbers. They're really big numbers.
Yep.
When you think about already potential supply shortages and you look at those numbers, that's a big migration.
Yep. Yeah, it's huge. Brisbane's supply chain down 95% from 4 years ago when it comes to real estate construction and development approvals coming through the pipeline. So we're in the middle of a perfect storm in that Southeast Queensland area. I think it's good. My business partner, Sam Sagris, you know him, folks, and Andy does too. He's terming it the double market movement with the Olympics and now this. Brizzy's going to get the old one too. So, but anyway, that's what's in the news in that sort of spot. And here's one that I think, hey, there's that thing I found from the other day, Andy. We were talking about like car prices, secondhand car prices up 34%. Get out of town. When did you buy a car a year ago and you could sell it for 34% more than you did the year before? This is just unheard of. This is crazy times. You talked about that weird inflation thing last week, but I found it, so I thought I'd chuck it up there for us to have a look at.
Well, it's interesting because we have rules in Australia in and around price gouging. So certain prices are set. So that standard type of demand pull inflation. So when demand for something is outstripping what can be economically supplied, the ability for those prices to rise from the suppliers, so from the new car manufacturers, is actually very limited. So and by the ACCC. So if they start to rise prices above a certain bracket, it's just not kosher. It's not allowed.
That'll be yeah. Well, you reckon they'll get on it? You reckon?
Well, that's the problem is they can't. They can only sell the cars at a certain price. Otherwise, they'll get smashed by the ACCC for price gouging. But there's nothing stopping you from buying a car, Jace, and then selling it for 30% more. And we was talking about it with my brother-in-law today about utes, and he was looking at a brand new Amarok for $64,000 and a 5-year-old equivalent shit box for $74,000, which is available now. But that's the dynamics. And going back to some of the themes that we were talking about last week when it comes to inflation, and I think we're going to talk about it a lot more, as I've said, we've got to actually understand some of the different mechanisms that are in place that cause these anomalous types of behaviors that exist, because they're synthetic, and quite often they're synthetic created by regulation.
Yeah, well, there you go. Interesting one right there, isn't it? Well, it's like the old concert tickets, isn't it? Hey, you go buy a few in advance, and then you can sell them for scalping on the day for a bit of a margin. But anyway, this is an interesting one, Andy. I thought, and maybe we can put a pin in it for a bit later. But the RBA is talking about a payment act needing updated, and I read a bit more into this, which really is landing about this digital wallet space. So our financial system is sorely undergunned when it comes to this new technology, which is bearing down on us like a freight train. And Google and Apple have applied for banking licenses. These big companies around the world are going to be in charge of lots and lots of money, and be in many countries now becoming almost way more powerful than the banking institutions when it comes to the ability to manage people's monies and funds. And our governments are just million miles behind on these things. So there's some.
The last bit of major legislation that came in for the Banking Act was the Banking Act of 59, 58, 59, 1859.
Hasn't been updated since.
My dyslexia is kicking in. Like, there have been amendments, but there hasn't been a massive overhaul to it. So it's grossly under-equipped to deal with what is a pressing tidal wave of new ways of transacting. And unfortunately, they spend more time in politics trying to win votes rather than protect the future quite often. And sometimes these things really, which should be front of mind, because this is the future, and this is where regulation should be focused on whatever's happening. Yes, we need to protect the people, but the best way of protecting them is having an incredible offensive game. And unfortunately, we're solely in defense and defense of political, popularity, for lack of a better word. And this is going to be a big topic. And geez, I hope this becomes really front of game, because really, as Australians, this is the stuff that we should be yelling out for. Subsidies on electric cars, getting into the new payments. Like, literally, Australia is viewed by a lot of the tech companies and a lot of the rest of the world as we adopt technology faster than any other Western country. So they test a lot of things down here. So doesn't it make sense for us to be actually furthering our game in areas just like this, so that we can use our own economy to create new standards? Because at the moment, everyone else is using us as the guinea pig, and we're getting left behind.
Take advantage of those things for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's coming. There's no stopping it, right? So there's not. This is inevitable. This is inevitable that Google and Apple and the likes, Amazon and whatever, are going to be banking institutions, forms of storage, electronic wallets, you name it, and then some, probably things we don't already know. It's coming, and we need to be ready as consumers, and also give our governments a bit of a kick in the bum to get themselves up and into this stuff earlier, so we're not chasing our tails. So
progressive regulation, not regressive regulation.
Absolutely. Bit of a shout out to Aaron. How are you, mate? Good to see you here. Jeff, he reckons everyone will end up in Cairns. We keep moving north. I don't know, Jeff. I lived in Townsville, man. It's too hot. It's just you get to a point where it becomes too hot and too sweaty. Not my cup of tea, anyway. But it is interesting, the amount of people looking to move north at the moment. But we'll see if that trend continues. And last but not least, this one for me in the news, Andy. So this is the first piece of negative growth news that I have seen in probably 12, 18 months when it comes to the property prices. Now, if we go back a few Wealth, Wine and Wisdoms, I said that the first location to show these signs of faltering and wavering would be Sydney. Okay. Sydney has overshot reality. The ability for the regular person to afford a mortgage by a long shot. You have a look at these suburbs, and if I was to do a little bit of homework, which I'm sure would be very easy to do, and you go have a look at the suburbs on the right that have lost value, their average wage would be a lot lower than those suburbs on the left. And what's happening right now with Sydney in a lockdown, some uncertainty, and the speed of reporting in the real estate game. You and I talked about it. It's not the share market, but it's certainly faster than it has been. We've had some negative change in values booked on a monthly rolling basis in Sydney. Some negative change, some downward change on the average prices, and that's early signs for me. And also a warning sign for a lot of people when you are in areas where the average wage or the average person in those areas lives literally week to week, paycheck to paycheck, and has quite a lot of average consumer debt. You do tend to get effects when property prices overshoot, and it's an interesting conversation. And I think this is kind of what I would call a canary in the coal mine for Sydney early on. If we do get some economic playthrough in Sydney's economy, then it will affect areas that have got the price to average income ratio. The gap is basically too big, and you will see some regression in house prices as we roll along. So the early warning, Andy, but what you will see is those areas that have got lots of discretionary income and the gap isn't that big, they will continue to rise. So, I think Sydney's kind of got stretched its rubber band a long way for the average person in Sydney. But, Brisbane's still got a long way to go in that space. Places like Canberra and Melbourne are right up there now at $1 million house prices average. But as investors and property investors, don't be freaked out by this. This is normal. This is actually what I said would occur. Sydney overshoots, it adjusts, and anytime either wages are under threat or interest rates increase, you will see this again. You'll see this again in those places where the gap between the cost of mortgage and discretionary income is way too large to even to weather any storm, and that you'll see it. Yep. So
I think we almost need a scoreboard here, mate. I reckon that's Jason 10 versus the journalist negative 150. I think that's the count at the moment.
Mate, yeah. They don't. I don't think they want to be right with their news. They just want to have something to say, and I think they rush out a few of their ideas. But there you go, man. Well, a bit of a shout out here, Patrick. Good to see you, mate. Yasmin's in the house, and Harry, all the way from Sydney. How are you, mate?
Melbourne.
Sorry. And Michelle's got a question for us later on. But we'll have a little bit of a chat about that one, Andy.
I reckon that's an interesting one. From the first glimpse I got of it, I might say that because they're paying tax again, that might be the reason, Michelle. It may well be the reason. Last year they didn't pay very much tax because of all of the subsidies, and this year they're paying it again, and many people haven't planned for it. And as a result, they wouldn't have been watching because we were telling them to bag the cash, control the cash, as Jason says.
Control the
bag
cash.
the cash, control the cash, and be aware to plan for the next bills that are coming in. I've got a sneaky suspicion that unusually high might be abnormally normal when you take out the unusually low year. Could be right. Ping us if I'm on the wrong track there, Michelle, but I've got a gut feeling that might be right, but we'll have a bit closer look a little bit later on.
Yeah, Andy, and I think that really sort of dovetails into bringing Heather on in about a minute or so. But really, what you and I said about everyone, a lot of people, and there's actually quite diverse experiences going on in Australia over the last 18 odd months. But there are a lot of people and businesses that got 10 grand out of their super, got some JobKeeper, ended up with some support, and by and large ended up with some reasonable amount of cash and savings or available dollars and cents. you and I said to everyone, hey, listen, don't get carried away here. Make sure you put some away for a rainy day. This uncertainty, economic uncertainty, is certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination. And any benefit you get, don't get out there too loose and buy secondhand cars for 70 grand, which I think is occurring hand over fist. But at the end of the day, part of our community is a bunch of business owners, and while at this moment in time, as we chat, there's not the JobKeeper and other things being on offer, Andy, in the economy for a bit of a soft landing. But there are some other things out there for business owners and people who've got jobs as well. There's ways to help your business that you work for out potentially, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to chat to our guest tonight, Heather. I'm going to bring you on. You got yourself organised, Heather? There you go. Yep, you got your wine. Yes, good to see. There's ways to keep moving forward potentially smartly in the economy as business owners and people who are sort of wanting to improve their careers in a better beneficial way, because there's opportunities out there for government funding for certain things. And Heather works in that industry, has done for quite a long time. And we thought we'd bring her on tonight to maybe talk about that for anyone who's a business owner listening in or if you work for someone, you could tell your business owners or the people you work for about these opportunities to get some support from the government.
And it is an opportunity, right? The conversation that we had last night, and for those of you who are listening, we're about to drop some bombs, and they're good ones. And it was actually the way that Jason and I started this show, which was really to provide insights, information, help people navigate challenging times. That was really the initial reason that we started it. Then we got on the bandwagon of attacking some of the journalists and politicians who were just talking shit. But ultimately, we Jason and I debrief now multiple times a week in regards to multiple different things that are happening. And when Victoria went into lockdown, Brisbane was in lockdown, Sydney was in lockdown. We were both on the blower to each other and sort of said, Jace, we've got to try and figure something out here. What are you doing in regards to being able to find some more cash? Because how are we going to sustain our businesses during lockdowns when we've got no money coming in, we've got no JobKeeper coming in, there's very little subsidy out there. I know there is some in Sydney and for over the 7-day period, but for Victoria, where we've gone into a 5-day with no subsidy, we're now in a 7-day where we may get a little bit of subsidy. But so Jason and I had a conversation last night for everybody there, and we're going, well, how can we put a bit more money back into the business community? How can we find some more cash to push back into the business community and figure out ways that we can potentially weather this storm? And when I asked Jace, of course, Jace is always trying to look at all the little Street Fighter tactics of business. And it came to fruition very, very quickly that there is an incredible opportunity to both increase the education, increase the quality of your team, and increase the cash within your business. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And literally, as soon as I got off the phone with you, Jace, and then Heather later on, I must have pinged about 6 or 7 people who were, able to take advantage of this. And if you're in business and you have employees, then this is what you need to be listening to. And everybody was absolutely, champing at the bit to hear this. So for those listening, there's a bit to take in, but we're going to show you how you can upskill and potentially, put tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars back into the business and make the place a better place to be and a better place to work. And ultimately, trying to read at the same time, I can't fucking do it.
Yeah, Shay's in there. Let Heather speak. Well, Heather, for those who don't know you, do you want to do a quick introduction? Andy and I have known you for many years. You're an amazing lady. But do the quick intros.
Happy days. Thanks, guys. And it's just a privilege to be here. When I spoke to Andy yesterday or late last night, really, about what we could do, it was just what an amazing opportunity for all your listeners. So my name's Heather Gardner. I'm the and a registered training organisation in lockdown in Brisbane, albeit at the farm. And we service the civil construction and horticulture industry. But the amazing news is, if any of your listeners, if they're in business, if they're an employee, everyone in the country has this opportunity now. Like, it is just one of those ferret hole things that, because it's simply complex and complexly simple, no one does it. So what is it? It's appendix.
Shall I do a drum roll for you, Heather?
Yeah, little drum roll. You can drink your wine. And for some, they may have heard it Appendix I. For others, they may have heard it as wage subsidy support, back funding, incentive programs. There's a whole bunch of names, out there. And I certainly had a conversation with a client that Andy and I spoke about yesterday. And what we hear so often is, I've heard it, I've seen it in the press, but I don't have time. They're the three things that we actually hear time and time again. But essentially, people are leaving. As you said, Andy, there isn't that support around there. And I believe everybody likes to upskill their people or like them to be better. Back funding or back initiative or back funding program, whatever you like to call it, it's actually called boosting apprenticeships, is an opportunity for every business in Australia to be able to, with existing employees, upskill them and get up to a maximum of $7,000 a quarter back on their wages every quarter, up to a maximum of $28,000 in a year. And I don't know about anybody else, but $28K in your back pocket, just because you're already doing what you're doing and you upskill, seems like a bloody good idea to me.
Not a bad way to go about it, mate, for sure. So, for those of you guys listening in, maybe, for me as a business owner, I've been lucky enough to be in the real estate industry, and that's benefited over the last 18 months. And I've been able to reinvest a little bit of that in new team members, and been using people like Heather as advisors and sounding boards. And I've been able to have 5 new team members join my business, and across the different states, I've been able to qualify for that funding on all 5 of those team members. So, rough figures, that's $125,000 in the next 12 months that I will be, as a business owner, helped to employ new people, put money back into the economy, give people jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's not directly job keeper, but this might be, we could call it job maker. Let's say I wouldn't have employed 3 more people. I would have only employed 2 if this was not on offer. So for me, folks, if you're listening in, I took advantage of this, and I said, well, why not? Why not get a couple of extra team members? Give some more jobs out there, and also get a bit more productivity into my business. So it was kind of like almost like for every 2, I got a free one. It was like a great way. Yeah. Yeah. Buy 2, get 1 for free as a business owner type of thing. But Heather, one thing I didn't realize, and if maybe you could explain this a little bit, because then I might be able to take it tomorrow and I'll be chatting to my financial controller on a Saturday, or maybe straight after this call. So are you saying existing team, so wherever you're working, potentially your business could then go ahead and qualify for something and get some funding as well for existing employees?
Absolutely. So you've got obviously the opportunity for employing new talent, which is awesome. But some businesses, as we know, aren't in that position. They're going, how do I actually keep my team and my talent that I've got already, and still actually help with that? So the government have Appendix I, and on Appendix I is a number of qualifications, predominantly at a certificate 4 level.
Yep.
That an existing employee can actually sign into, and they can get the back funding that comes back every quarter. So everyone looks at Appendix I. I guess when I extrapolated this out, the one thing that I came up with was that everybody has an opportunity for workplace health and safety. So here's a really simple example. Everybody pays people. So workplace health and safety is either, if you're in construction like us, it's obviously out on sites and in the office. But other businesses, be it in health, be it in financial services, be it in, real estate and property, you still have a HR element. Therefore, you still have workplace health and safety. So any person employed doing those tasks is able to, if they haven't already got the qualification, sign up into a certificate of workplace health and safety, and that business will get the back funding. Now, there's a few idiosyncrasies that go with that, but they are really simple as long as you follow the guidelines. And as I've said to Andy, we're more than happy to be able to, regardless of our industry or whatever, be able to guide people and go, yep, this is what you can do. Go here, go there. Because at the end of the day, the complexity that people go, it's all too hard, but it's money for jam.
Absolutely.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
And so just so we can clarify, because quite often the government managed to do a good job of dressing mutton as lamb with these types of things, and complexity is the killer. But just really simplifying it back down, every business, mine, Jason's, your panel beater down the road, right the way through to standard office type things, where most of us don't actually have any HR when you're in probably the under 10 employees. But certain laws, especially if you've got manual side of the equation, are now in place, certainly on the Eastern Seaboard, that can see directors of companies up on manslaughter charges if we're not satisfying our obligations under health and safety for our employees. So what we can do as a business is we can literally upskill one of our team members to be able to cover our butts from a legal compliance perspective. There's a little bit of complexity that you can help people navigate, but on the back end of that, there's anywhere up to a $28,000 paycheck for the business over the course of the year. Is that basically right?
Yeah, essentially it is. So to get the maximum, the ceiling is 60K and above. So if you pay somebody 60K and above, you get the maximum of 7K a quarter. If you're paying someone 40, you get 5,000 a quarter. You pay 50, it's 62.50. But essentially, you're right, Andy, with the industrial manslaughter laws as they are, and there's a difference between having a safety culture and embracing safety. So a lot of people go, we want to be safe, we want to do things right, but they don't quite have the mechanics that go with it. So it's not what you're doing is providing your team talent member, somebody within your business, the skills, knowledge, and experience in order to actually help the business navigate those things. And seriously, if everybody doesn't have somebody that's enrolled in that, one, you're actually leaving your business exposed. Two, you've got a great opportunity to upskill. And three, you're going to get money back in the bank. And I'm pretty sure that all your listeners would be all across that.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's winning everywhere, isn't it? That's for sure. Now, let's say right now, if there's a few folks listening in and you are on the team side, you work for someone, you're employed, and maybe your employer doesn't know this, maybe you could go and enlighten them of these things and maybe ask them for a little bit of an extra incentive to share in the upside of that as a bit of a pay rise. And then I can lend you some more money. We can buy some more property and everyone's happy. That's what I like the idea of.
Whereas I'd say, how good is that you actually keep your job and you upskill and your employer goes, how good are you, because you're looking for the safety of the business. So there we go.
I love it. I love it. And Heather, I'm assuming there are, obviously in the certificate in Andy and my world, there's certain certs in our world, in finance and financial planning and stuff like that. That'd be, for those who might not understand or know this or have never thought of it, all across industries, there's those certificates, isn't there? Your specialty is in that world of, building and et cetera.
Yep.
But I'm sure it's everywhere. Yeah.
So, and this is where the complexity starts to occur, because depending on which state you're in, and I'll give you a perfect example: the certificate
Yes.
4 in building and construction. So that is recognised across every state in Australia except Queensland. So any of your listeners that were based in Queensland that thought, wow, I'm going to do the Cert 4 in building and construction, that actually won't attract the back funding in Queensland. New South Wales it will, and every other state and territory in the country, it does. So I guess like our borders, each state has their idiosyncrasies with what they see, and it can potentially be where they see their skills shortage. So that's where, understanding and having a look at that and going, right, what industry are you in? What are you looking at? And then let's have a look at the opportunity, which is, we're more than happy to. We're in building, construction, and horticulture. But this is, for me, this is actually about keeping businesses alive. So I don't give a damn if somebody's in security that's listening. If we can point them in the right direction, connect them with the people that they need to, happy days. This is about saving business.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. There's a question from Yasmin here saying, is it just one staff member who can do the work, health and safety, or is it more? Like, can you have multiple team members, different locations, different states, or is there a limit?
So there's no limit except for, because all these qualifications that the government have now opened up to in a back funding environment, what they're saying is it's no different to an apprenticeship, and understand an apprenticeship is just the funding model type. But there's got to be some supervision. So I'll give you an example. If you were a team of 10 and you put 10 people into a workplace health and safety, you wouldn't get it through because it sort of pigs at a trough.
Yep.
So versus saying, you know what, we can actually put through 4 people in a workplace health and safety scenario, and let's assume you're in New South Wales, and we could do 2 people into the certificate 4 in building, relevant to, I'm just using a building example building business now.
Yep.
They could get 6 people through. Now, if those people, the ones that did the workplace health and safety, and let's say 4 of them did it, if they finished their course before March 31, 2022, the business could then go, you know what, we'll actually put the other 4 through the course, and we'll get, for another 12 months, another group of people. So I guess and this is where the nuances or the complexities can come into this. But if I give you an example of our business, we've got some that are doing a diploma a diploma of management. They were new team members, so that's one of those. Workplace health and safety. There's a Cert 4 in small business management. There's an Cert 3 in administration. So I actually don't have any person in my team that isn't under back funding. So it's about being smart. Who can I employ because I'm going to do it anyway? New employees have a bigger menu to select from. Existing employees have a shorter menu to select from, is probably the easiest way to put it.
That's great. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense. Again, that's the nuances here where, like Andy said, and you said, like the complexity of this, like it's simply complex but at the end of the day, if you don't know what you don't know, you're like, crikey, I'm taking advantage of the new team. So I'm like, great, I'm going to sort of invest in a new team. I'll get some support from the government. But there's already existing team. I know 3 or 4 of my team who want to stretch themselves. They want to improve their skills. And then I'm like, well, how do I, how do I manage that as well as all other things? So it's been fantastic to hear that. It's extremely valuable. Anyone listening in, I think, will be thinking the same. Harry said, "Can the dictator, the director, of the
No, I think you got it right. It was just Harry's typo.
of the business
So
get some funding if they're not on payroll? How does it work for, let's say, Andy or me? Like, is it still applicable for owners of the business, Heather? And we can get
yeah.
ourselves a certificate.
So if you are not the direct owner, i.e., if Heather Gardner doesn't own Foundation Training Australia, and if
Yeah,
they've been listening to your advice and all the other things around structure, Heather
structures
Gardner
itself
doesn't
properly.
own that
Yes,
business. Therefore, Heather Gardner or Harry, if he doesn't personally own the business, he is able to access back funding. Yes.
that's fantastic. Oh, that's great. I think, that's a bit of a game
Harry,
changer. Yeah,
yeah, sure, Harry is a smart man, and Harry probably doesn't own the shares of his company in his personal name, so therefore he would be fine. Again, look, we're happy to do those checks for people because it does become complex, and if we can
yes,
say, here's a few questions, answer these, we can come back to you, point you in the right direction, and connect you with the people that you need to connect with. If we can help, great. But if I don't care, so I don't industry, small to medium businesses are still there. In the long term. So
Yes.
and it's a great opportunity to pitch this to your team from a retention strategy as well. Hey Jason, I actually think you're doing an amazing sort of role. Would you consider looking at XYZ, whatever it is, Cert 4 that we identify? We'd love you to do it. And by the way, it actually helps support the business, going forward as well. So, I don't think, again, there'd be too many people that wouldn't, sort of adopt those opportunities.
absolutely. I think most people, if given the chance or the opportunity to do something to help the business and keep their jobs, and that full circle support, I think that'd empower people. To be honest, people would feel great to be able to at least do something, have some influence when it comes to these things. So I think that's a great shout out. In that sort of space for sure.
So I guess
Yeah, this
one of the only, and I see that you're going to a question, just understand, like any training, you've got to give your people time in
mm,
work time to be able to do some of this. So for us, our team usually go after lunch, 1 until 3, 2 hours a week, to be able to do their training, and then they do some outside of work. But as an organisation, you've got to give them that time, to be able to support that. So,
yeah, no, that's perfect. And that makes sense. Makes sense. I think what we do know is if you're happy and you feel like you're being productive, what do they say? You give if you want something done, you give it to a busy person. At the end of the day, good
absolutely.
productive people are going to knock it out of the park.
Well,
Michelle
what
asked a good
better
question.
time
What happens if
to
someone? Oh,
what
sorry, Andy.
better time to actually do it than while we're in lockdown as well?
Yeah,
And what as long as the initiative continues to stay here, look, this. Yes, we're framing it in the environment of getting some more cash into business owners' pockets, but ultimately, this is really a best practice, isn't it? This is something that we should be focusing on doing more frequently with our team over time. And I think that quite a lot of us, what ends up happening is when you get busy, when you get under the pump with the trying times of COVID, some of the stuff that goes out the window very, very quickly is time with the team and training.
yeah,
And for me, potentially, this is an incredible opportunity where people do have more time on their hands, where they can actually start to upskill them in a productive way. When potentially there's many businesses out there that their team are largely unoccupied as far as duties via just not being able to operate in their standard form, restaurants, so on and so forth.
yeah. No, it's a great. Michelle had a quick question. Obviously, there's nuts and bolts to this sort of stuff. Heather, as well. If someone leaves halfway through, can they take it with them? Does the Does the business retain it? Sort of. I mean, obviously, that's the devil would be in the detail and that sort of stuff, and logistics. No matter which way you slice these things.
Yeah. So if we just talk from an employer's perspective, like anything, if the if the learner, let's call them a learner for want of a better word for the upskilling purpose, if they are no longer on your books, you don't get the money. It's that simple. But you get the money, the rebate or the incentive up until whenever they have left. But this is really about, if you value your employees and your team, this is a great way for them. So I guess it's just another tool, it's another strategy in order to be able to keep your people occupied, as you said, Jace or Andy. Some of them may be sitting around. You'd hope not. You hope that they're highly productive individuals, and this just ends up being something else for them to be able to do. But yeah, opportunity. You've really funking with my head because everyone's going around the screen.
I was doing some live producing and Heather like,
"Oh, wine to do that, mate. I can tell you."
No. Well, no.
If we go to the we're talking about existing employees. If we look at new employees, like seriously, there is money, like serious money for people that. And as I said, I was talking to this young fellow today, and for him, he's looking and he's in our space in civil. There's sign-on bonuses. There's additional cash. So if you put an apprentice on, not only do you get the apprenticeship sign-on and completion, you also get the back funding. So we're talking some significant money that is available. And the one thing I really want to share with your listeners is I was talking to my COO yesterday, and it's not a client of ours. They now are. They've moved across. They left $259,000 on the table because their HR lady didn't submit the forms.
Oh, that's a lot of dough. That's a lot of payroll. Yeah.
So whilst we talk about this, what the opportunities are, if you don't do what you have to do, and like most things with the government, they have deadlines and dates.
Yep.
You actually leave money on the table.
Yeah.
And again, we've actually just formed an alliance with an affiliate company to make sure any clients that are with us, we do that, but others, so they don't leave that money on the table. You can sign up here and be really excited, but if you don't do the important bit, which is claiming it, well, then it's just a great upskilling exercise without the potential reward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really, it was really a great incentive for me and Andy and I were talking about. We're like, how do we take advantage of? We think there's great opportunity right now, but this kind of the uncertainty. We're kind of 50-50. Do we give it a good nudge and grow our team, or do we just sort of wait a little while? And for me, that extra bit of funding and that extra bit of government incentive gave me the initiative to go, yep, no, bugger it, we'll go for it. We'll bring on 5 people instead of 2. We'll give it a good nudge and take the opportunity. And I think that's, a really good thing for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. Number one, good opportunity to skill people up while we might have some downtime. Or number 2, there might be some great opportunity to sort of take the risk or lessen the risk in taking advantage of those opportunities, in the marketplace, growing the business, sustaining it, not shrinking back from these uncertain times, and see what might come of that. If you've got a little bit more comfort in the bank account, than the full cost of a new team member or whatever that might be. So I think it's fantastic. That's great. Yeah. Heather, how can there's a lot of listeners on here, and how can people work with you guys? Obviously, you're in the building industry as your specific or your sort of specialty, but is there a website or something people can sort of reach out to you and work with you and your team in and around this stuff?
Well, certainly, yes, we are in civil construction and horticulture. Workplace health and safety is across every industry, so it's irrelevant. The other specialty qualifications, etc., within Appendix I, again, I've shared with Andy. I've given you guys a link. It's a landing page. If people just fill out their name, their phone number, email, and just a couple of questions: what industry are they in? And is there any particular course that they actually might be interested in? Whether or not they're an employer or an employee. So there are a couple of things, and what state, because obviously depending on your state will govern where we can best suit. And
Yep.
and again, if we can't help you, what we will do, as in if we can't serve you in our industry, we will absolutely point you in the direction, connect you with a Australian Apprenticeship Support Network provider and RTO to be able to do what you need to do. And let's get some money in the bank, guys.
Totally.
So if you do have to refer them on, does that mean, Heather, that you've got people that can help them navigate making sure that they get the money and they don't forget to actually get the forms in?
So on the link that you guys have got, we've actually asked the question: would you want help with filling out your application? If you say yes, we can keep in contact regardless of whether or not you're in our space, and we can do that stuff, sort of for you. Clearly, it's like an outsource environment, but we're bloody good at what we do. We're actually at the top of our tree. And any client that we work with, we haven't failed once in getting money back in their bank.
Yeah, because I think most business owners can be pretty bad with paperwork and making sure that things that are outside of their hitting zone actually get done on time. And I think having that assistance to get through it, that's the part that would get me over the line, because otherwise I know what we're like as business owners. We'll pick it up, we'll look at the form, we'll go, poor. And we'll go through the easy parts. We'll get to the first hard one and it'll go to the pile. And that pile will eventually get bigger and bigger, and it tends to be on the bottom of it. But if you've got people like yourself who can, just navigate that, it's generally one or two things that they just throw in there that completely derail your ability to understand what's going on. But it's that hurdle that stops so many of us from actually doing this stuff.
And a reasonably tight time frame as well, because it's obviously done each quarter. And so, there are some requirements to get that in. And hey, I completely agree, because that stuff hits my inbox and I go, oh, and send it on. So I know exactly what it's like, because you open it and it just goes page, and it's like, oh my God, I haven't got time to think about it. So I don't want to think about it. But I love it when we reconcile and the money's in the bank.
That money's in the bank. Yeah, exactly. Harry was saying, is there any sort of out of pocket sort of stuff, Heather, in that circumstance? Like, for me, Harry, I've got a full-time team members internally going through this process. So, if the net time, if I added up the time for my team or me to do it, it's going to cost me money anyway. And I'm sure there's a little bit of a opportunity for Heather and her team to benefit from the relationship as well. Is there any out of pocket for business owners, Heather?
So if we look at like the courses, obviously it depends on whether or not it's funded, unfunded, fee for service, what state you're in, what accessibility. Yep. So one is course cost. So, depending on where you are and what you're looking to do, scenario one. Scenario two, the claiming side, it's 12.5% each time, and that's what it is to be able to do those things, regardless of whether or not you're with another organisation or not. If they're with us, it's value add, clearly. But if you're doing security, for example, and you're doing a security course, but you want to make sure you get the money in the bank, it's 12.5% for us to actually manage that for you.
Manage that, yeah. And I think if you add up the dollars and cents team of actually either employing someone or doing it yourself, it'd be well invested, I'm quite sure. And Harry, it's a tax deduction, mate. So, you'll be right. You know all about that, brother. No, that's fantastic, Heather, and really appreciate that. I know there's a lot of people who could take advantage of that, and it really ticks all the boxes. The business owner gets some support from the government. Then the team who work with the business owner gets supported by the business owner. Staying in business, let's face it, small to medium business, is the backbone of this country, and employs a lot of people. And we want to make sure we can keep, people in jobs. And ultimately, I like that because people can borrow money and buy properties, so it all wins. There's a tick in all the boxes for me. But Harry's a big fan. Heather, I'm sure Harry will be in contact. So he said you had me at hello, the Jerry Maguire. And for those folks who want to know a little bit more about Heather, I did have the pleasure of interviewing Heather one time on my podcast, The Wealth Faculty. So I've put that in there, a little episode in there. If you want to get to know Heather a little bit, she's an amazing lady, absolutely salt of the earth, rock star, and we love you, babe, and we're really lucky to know someone as amazing as you, and the value that you add out there in the world with small to medium business owners, and the way you support people. Real pleasure to have you on Wealth, Wine and Wisdom tonight. You brought the wisdom. You brought all the wisdom tonight.
Yeah.
And I didn't swear once. Did you notice?
Not once.
Gee, that's a fucking miracle.
No fucks delivered. Yeah, unbelievable. No, just reiterating, Jace, you put the link that everyone can click on in here.
I did. I whacked it in the chat, folks. Yep.
Have a look there. You can see Jason and my face on there, just so you know you're in the right spot. But guys, share this around, because literally until last night, I had no idea of this opportunity until we started yapping about this. So the chances are, if I don't know about it, most of your friends who might be business owners or employees wanting to upskill, this is 100% one of these opportunities, literally, like when we started this, in bringing the various different government subsidies, the various different grants that you're able to access, of which businesses have been propped up tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, which has really supported small business around Australia. Make no mistake, people do not know about this. So if you know business owners and they're not listening to this, share this with them, shoot them across that link, because literally this may be, for some businesses, the difference between them making it through and ultimately making it through stronger and better as a machine, and potentially not making it through, because make no mistake, it is tough out there for businesses in lockdown, and every dollar that can come their way and every upskill is magnified, and people are really doing it tough. So these things can make all the difference. Share it. Make sure that you get it into their hands, because my tip, mate, is that this will make massive difference to those people who are listening. And I'd really love feedback from people who start to do this, because I already know from the people that I've spoken to, we're going to be doing it. Jace, you're doing it. 3 or 4 people I spoke to last night are all doing it straight off the bat, and I'd urge everybody here to make sure that they sing as loudly as they can, so that more people know about it.
Absolutely. I think it's a great pay it forward strategy, and it's JobKeeper plus, as far as I'm concerned, because I think in this way, it brings more jobs rather than, and brings more productivity. So I'm a massive fan. I'll be doing the back funding part, Heather. You've changed my my world, as you always do. Every time I get to hang out with you, you add value in immense ways. So thank you, darling, and appreciate you paying it forward out there in the world. And yes, folks, make sure you share those links. Heather and her team can help anyone in that space. And fantastic to have you on tonight, mate. Appreciate that. Well, I think it's a great way to end the night. Almost right on time, almost 60 minutes. Perfect timing as we're going.
You've brought a degree of professionalism to this affair, Heather. You really have.
A bit of a shout out from Shay. Heather is awesome. We know, absolutely. And Michelle's saying, thanks for sharing, Heather. You're awesome. There we go. And Alison, there you go. Certificate free. Gave her a start out of high school. It's brilliant for employment for people. So absolutely 100%. So like we said, folks, share it around. This stuff is awesome and amazing. Great value tonight on Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Awesome to have a guest on.
Yes.
So it's not just me and Andy listening to ourselves rabbit on. So Heather, thank you, darling. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
And
Didn't drink as much.
no, I didn't actually. I didn't. I was glued to the screen listening in. So that's good too. Saved my liver. Harry's going to be reaching out too.
Appreciate
All right.
and,
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Andy. Good to see you guys. Cheers, gang. Bye, folks.
Good night.